So Mama Serval had been owned by a private individual in New York, and we got a call that they were having trouble finding a place for her to go. What often happens is that people get servals, they think they're going to make great pets. As the servals get older, they get a little bit more aggressive, and their wild nature really comes out. And this is certainly what happened with Mama Serval, is that she had become a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more hissy and swatty, which were all normal serval things to do. But the family that was caring for her could no longer care for her. And so they started making phone calls to try and find some place that was going to be able to take her, that would be able to offer her a home for the rest of her life. And they started with some of the sanctuaries across the United States. They got to the Big Cat Rescue in Florida. Big Cat Rescue sent it on to the Big Cat Sanctuary Alliance, and then they called us to see if we could offer her a home. Once we decided that yes, we were happy to give her a home, we made the trip up to New York, picked her up, and brought her back to Caroline Tiger Rescue. So any new animals that we have that come to Caroline Tiger Rescue are always going to go through a quarantine period before they go out into the sanctuary. Many of the animals that come to us, we do not know their health status. We don't know if they've been vaccinated. If they have been vaccinated, we don't know if they got all of their vaccines. And so we really try and make sure that everybody is healthy before we're going to put them into the sanctuary with the other animals. Our quarantine facility is made so that we're able to clean it thoroughly. So if we were to have an animal that came through with a virus that we needed to handle, we are able to clean it and keep everybody safe. So every animal that comes in is going to go through that same quarantine process just to make sure they're all happy and healthy before we introduce them out to the sanctuary, because the animals that we have here already are obviously our first priority, so we want to make sure that we don't get anybody sick. So when we're going to get an animal under anesthesia, which is what is required when we're going to do a physical on them, we first have to make sure that we have all of our equipment ready to go. So that's making sure that we have all the medications that we need, the supplies, needles and syringes and blood tubes, making sure that we have the vaccines that we need, equipment that we use, like an EKG, which is where we monitor their heart to make sure that their heart is healthy while we have them under anesthesia. All of those sorts of things have to be collected and prepped and ready to go for any anesthesia event. For a quarantine event, that just means that those things are then going to be in quarantine until we are completed. And so for the sake of Mama's quarantine physical, we actually had to collect everything and take it down to quarantine so that we could do her physical in there, so that we weren't risking spreading anything that she might potentially have elsewhere through the sanctuary. So everything will stay down there, and we clean everything up before we're going to bring it back up to the house. So when we're going to get an animal under anesthesia, the first thing we have to do is be able to get the anesthetic drugs into them. For our small cats, we're able to use large nets that we can catch them in the net, and then we're able to give them an injection in a large muscle with the medications that we use to get them under anesthesia. When we're doing bigger guys, we actually have to use a dart gun in order to be able to dart them. Now, ideally, if we have animals that are either well trained or that are just really easy to get along with, we will sometimes do hand injections where they're going to come up along the fence and we're going to be able to pole syringe them with a long pole as opposed to having to use a dart gun or nets. So once the cat is under anesthesia, and are asleep and we feel like we can safely handle them, one of the first things that we'll do is make sure that we get an accurate weight on them. So we'll bring her out, get her onto a scale, and get a weight. And that weight helps us determine all sorts of different things, like the amount of drugs that we're going to use to keep her under anesthesia, and if she needs any drugs afterwards, like antibiotics or medications along that line. So that weight is really important to us. The next thing we're going to do is get an IV catheter put in. And so an IV catheter is just like the catheters that we use in humans. It's just a small plastic tube that we put into her vein that allows us to get certain things to her, like fluids, so that we can keep her kidneys nice and healthy and happy. And sometimes their blood pressure will go down when they're under anesthesia. And so those fluids help keep their blood pressure nice and healthy. And then we also have the ability to give her any medications that we might need to keep her asleep. So we use propofol to help us keep our cats asleep while we're doing these anesthesia procedures. So once we have them safely under anesthesia and we have our IV catheter set up so that we can give them more drugs if we need to, then we're going to start our general physical. So this is starting from their nose and going all the way to their tail. We're going to look at their eyes to make sure that there's nothing in there like ulcerations or anything else that we might be concerned about. We want to check their teeth to make sure they're nice and healthy in the event that we might need to clean their teeth at all. And then we're just going to work our way down their body. She's going to check their shoulders and all of their joints just to make sure that they are healthy. Sometimes our cats are coming in with arthritis, and so we might want to know that if we need to give them medications. She'll listen to their heart and lungs to make sure that the heart rhythm is appropriate, to make sure their lungs are nice and clear. And we basically just work down their body, feeling for anything that might be unusual, any masses that we might need to pay attention to. Like I said, make sure those joints are moving really well, and that we just generally have our hands on every part of that cat. Because once they're awake, we can no longer have our hands on them. So this is our only time that we really get to get a really good look and our hands on these animals. Once we have given them a good quick once over to make sure everybody is happy and healthy, then our next step is to get blood samples. The blood samples are going to tell us a lot of different things about the animals. It'll tell us how well their kidneys and livers are working. It'll tell us how well their other body processes are going. It gives us an opportunity to look for any viruses that they may have. That is particularly important when we're bringing a new cat into the sanctuary. We want to make sure that they're negative for any viruses that they may be able to transmit to our other cats. If we can, we will get urine on them, and we also try and get a fecal sample on them so we can kind of test everything under the sun to make sure that they can go out into the sanctuary safely. So particularly with our new animals, many of these animals have not had proper diets and may be suffering from things like metabolic bone disease. So we do try and get a once-over x-ray of all of our cats that are coming in. This way we can look at their legs, we can look at their tails, their spines, their ribs. These are all places that tend to have fractures in them if they have not been fed a proper diet. So we just want to make sure that we don't have any fractures that we need to be paying attention to. And if there are old fractures that have healed, that we know where they exist, so that we can watch for potential issues like arthritis. So an x-ray will be done in different parts of the body just to make sure that we know what we're working with. So throughout the procedure, we're going to monitor some things the entire time. Some of those things include their heart rate, their respiration rate, and their temperature. So cats that are under anesthesia, and even people under anesthesia, can't control their temperature while they're asleep. And so we want to make sure that she's not getting too hot or too cold. And so you'll see even during Mama's procedure, we had to bring out some blankets and have some warm air blowing on her to keep her temperature up. It's not unusual, and once she comes up from anesthesia, she'll be able to control that temperature herself. We also monitor things like their heart rate and their respiration rate. So we want to make sure that her heart is doing well, that she is breathing well. Some of the anesthetics that we use can alter those. So we just want to make sure that they're staying in a nice normal range, and we will edit things if we need to. So all of our guys, when they come into the sanctuary, are all going to get vaccinated. For many of these animals, we may not have their vaccination history, so we don't know if they've ever had a vaccine, or if they have the last time that they had vaccines. And so we want to make sure everybody stays nice and healthy. Our small cats are going to get FVRCP, which is a virus combination, and a rabies vaccination. Our big cats, in addition to those two, will also get distemper because that has been seen in wild big cats, and so they will also get a distemper vaccine. They will continue to get these throughout their life just to make sure that we don't have any viruses that come aboard in the sanctuary. So while we have animals under anesthesia, it's really important that we're monitoring them the entire time. They no longer can blink on their own, so we have to make sure, you'll probably see in this video where we put some lubrication in her eyes, and that just helps make sure that they don't dry out and she gets an ulcer from the procedure, so it keeps them nice and moist. We will monitor to make sure she's asleep well enough, so we're going to be checking things like jaw tone to make sure that it's nice and loose. We'll be checking things like blink response and ear response by tapping on their ears and their eyes to see if they're going to blink or they're going to move their ears. So Mama came in with a little bit of a different issue that we had to take care of. Because Mama is a little bit on the larger side, she is not able to groom herself properly. And so unfortunately she did have some mats that were along her spine, along her back, which are just places that she can't reach to groom very well. And though her mats were actually pretty manageable, we were able just to use a brush to be able to get them to come off. Mats that are left unattended can actually cause a lot of problems. They will get to the point where they get really tight and you start to develop things like skin infections underneath them. So it's really important to get those brushed out kind of as quickly as you can. Sometimes they require us actually shaving the mats off just because they're too tight and we can't brush them off. But Mama luckily was able just to get brushed really well and just looked like she had gone for a day at the spa. Sometimes when we have animals under anesthesia, we do take advantage of the situation and we get paw prints made of the animals. This is kind of a fun thing that we do because it's not something that we can do anytime that they're awake. So while they're under anesthesia, we'll use some paint on their paws and get little prints made. We will give these paw prints to adoptive parents. We'll give them to people who may have helped with the rescue. If we sent people to go dry for us, they'll get one of the paw prints. And then we do also sell them in our gift shop if anybody wants to take home a little souvenir of Mama in the shape of her paw print. So once we are done with our procedure, then it's time to wake these guys back up. We do use some drugs in order to reverse some of the anesthetics that we use. Some of the medications that we've given her, she would have metabolized during that procedure, but others may last a little bit longer. And so those reversal drugs will just help get her system kicked back up and ready to go. And just like humans, they take a little bit to wake up. They'll be a little groggy. They may not be able to walk very steadily. And so it takes them just a little bit to wake up. We do just try and get them going as quickly as we can. By them getting up and waking up quickly, it gets their temperature back up and regulated, and in general we'll have them have a smoother recovery. Now thankfully we have received all the results back from Mama's quarantine and she passed with flying colors. She looks like she's in great health. In the next little bit we're going to work on getting her weight down a little bit, but other than that she was really healthy and looks great.